In Israel, a spokesperson for the government revealed the campaign against Hamas will pursue as soon as the resistance movement stops releasing hostages. In Guatemala, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights warned that the undue interference of the Attorney General's office in the electoral process has jeopardized the presidential transition and the constitutional order of the transfer of the power to President-elect Bernardo Arévalo. The UN's COP28 climate conference formally launches a loss and damage fund launched by the vulnerable nations devastated by natural disasters linked to global warming. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Thursday, a spokesperson for the Israeli government revealed the campaign against Hamas will pursue as soon as the resistance movement stops releasing hostages. On a Tel Aviv briefing, Ellen Levy argued that the government will stop the pause if Hamas stops releasing hostages. Then they'll pursue their offensive. The spokesperson pointed out that Israel has several goals in Gaza, including ensuring the Gaza Strip and can never threaten against the people of Israel and wiping off Hamas resistance movement. The troops in Gaza appeared increasingly weak as most women and children held by Hamas were already released in swaps for Palestinian prisoners. Today, Israel and Hamas agreed on extending their ceasefire by another day. International pressure mounted for such a standing pause. It is expected Hamas further negotiates with Israel for releasing men and soldiers.
I want to make the government's position perfectly clear as the hostage release pause continues. When Hamas stops releasing hostages, we will stop the pause and we will resume our campaign against Hamas in pursuit of those three main goals: destroying Hamas in response to the October 7th massacre, bringing back all of the hostages through the application of unrelenting military pressure on their captors, and ensuring that the Gaza Strip can never again threaten the people of Israel.
On Thursday, in the early hours of the day and within hours of the announcement of another day of truce, Israeli forces seized several points in Gaza. The violent incursion leaves dead, wounded, and arrested people. The extension of the truce was announced 5 minutes before the end of the 2 days that had been previously extended. However, early in the morning, humanitarian organizations reported that the city of Tulkarem and its refugee camp were invaded by Zionist forces. After causing extensive destruction with bulldozers, they took over the streets and neighborhoods in the south and east of the city. Bad by sniper, they stormed the refugee camp and destroyed residents' private property. The assault provoked a clash with local youths who were shot. Also in Jerusalem, at least 6 Palestinian youth were injured. On Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry announced that China will send a new batch of emergency humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. Briefing the media on Foreign Minister Wang Yi's speech at the UN Security Council on Wednesday on the Gaza issue, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin quoted Wang Yi as saying that the country will send additional aid to Gaza and support the Palestinian side's full membership in the UN. China has provided $1 million worth of humanitarian aid in cash to the Palestinian people and a shipment of food supplies, including canned goods, biscuits, meal, and drinking water, left Egypt for Gaza on Wednesday.
The Chinese government will provide a new batch of emergency humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. The political prospect for the two-state solution should be revitalized with stronger determination. Fairness and justice for the Palestinian question is the two-state solution, which is irreplaceable. Only when the two-state solution is truly and comprehensively implemented can peace in the Middle East be restored. China calls for an international peace conference of greater scale, scope, and effectiveness, and supports Palestine's full membership in the United Nations.
The non-governmental organization Heritage for Peace stressed on Wednesday that Israel attacks in Palestine have severely damaged or destroyed more than 100 historical sites in Gaza. The Spanish organization, which specializes in the preservation of art and culture, presented a report in which 104 religious and historical sites, houses, museums, and archaeological sites of vital importance, such as Omar Mosque, the third oldest church in the world, have been totally destroyed by the Israeli occupation army. The Zionist attacks also damaged, among many mosques, the one that is supposed to hold the remains of the great-grandfather of the Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad. In its content, UNESCO also expressed its concerns about the impact of the conflict in Gaza on the cultural heritage of humanity and called on all to respect international law. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, new dates, and more. Our study is coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights warned Wednesday that the undue interference of the Attorney General's office in Guatemala's electoral process has jeopardized the presidential transition and the constitutional order of the transfer of power to President-elect Bernardo Arevalo. The Commission urged the state of Guatemala to cease the interference of the public ministry, which threatens the democratic order and the sovereign will of the people. On the other hand, the president-elect Bernardo Arevalo seeks to declare illegal the actions taken by Judge Freddy Orellana to suspend the Semilla movement. In a sense, the executive secretary of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, Tania Reneum, expressed the urgent need to respect and guarantee the presidential transition process. On Wednesday in Panama, in the face of Supreme Court's decision, the local mining company insisted that it was complying with the law and reiterated that it was open to dialogue. The mining company added that it will clarify the issues related to environmental obligations, emphasizing that it understands the legal decision and calling for a constructive dialogue. On the other hand, the platform social, trade union, and indigenous movements reaffirmed the rejection of the mining activity and demanded the immediate departure of the Canadian company First Quantum from the country. In the rejection of the mining, Panama was literally paralyzed. Classes were suspended in search of the measure that the Supreme Court finally decreed on November 28th.
Thus, we as the Panamanian people and all groups to remain vigilant that the ruling is complied with and that we achieve the closure of the mine, and we will further see what it complies with the moratorium, which is spoken referred that is one of the 14 that were approved. Some are there, others are not. So what we must decide how we will face this, because the position of Panama was very crystal clear. We don't want mines in our country.
Meanwhile, the Secretary General of the National Union of Construction Similar Workers of Panama, Saul Mendez, reaffirmed on Wednesday evening that the First Quantum company cannot continue to extract material from the mine and call for actions to be taken in defense of the territory.
Now we have to talk to the people and demand the government to closure of First Quantum Transnational. First Quantum cannot continue extracting material from the mine. Hence here we have to take a closure plan made by the organizations and representatives of the popular movement, representative of the heroes of denounces, the native people, and all the social fighters.
The president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, announced that he will formally request a 6-month leave of absence to campaign for re-election. The head of state made the announcement on national television where he confirmed his intention to run for the election on February 4, 2024, despite the fact that the Panamanian constitution prohibits it. Bukele did not mention who will be his successor. He only said that the oversight of the government cabinet will be strengthened during his electoral leave, directly assigning the task to the public prosecutor.
First of all, as you all know, approximately in 3 days, I am going to request a license to the Legislative Assembly to engage in the campaign, and I am not going to be in office as president, let's say. I wanted to have a meeting before for a couple of issues that I think that are important. I don't know if some would think somehow, well, the president is not going to be so involved. Then we will be able to do this, the other, and it will be the other way around, in the sense that we are going to increase the control over the government's tax and the portfolios.
On Wednesday, Honduras received the temporary presidency of the Central American Integration System, CICA, from El Salvador. The Vice President of El Salvador, Felix Ulloa, handed over the baton to Renato Florentino Pineda, the special envoy of the Honduran government. The ceremony took place on the occasion of the 58th Ordinary Session of the Heads of States and Government of the CICA member countries, held in San Salvador. During the meeting, they endorsed a dynamic agenda to promote development and deepen the fight against poverty. CICA was created in 1991 with the aim of consolidating integration in Central America and make it a region of peace, freedom, democracy, and development. The Rectorate of the State University of Haiti on Wednesday demanded the immediate release of one of its students who was kidnapped on his way to the university. Yalson Barulos, a student of political science and international relations at the National Institute of Administration, managed international studies. According to the rector's office, the victim was detained earlier this week in downtown Port-au-Prince, the capital. Earlier this week, dozens of university students rallied to demand the release of their colleague, condemned his kidnapping, and called on the Haitian government to provide minimal guarantees of citizen security. In the south of Brazil, families of the landless for the workers' movement to the streets of Rio Grande to protest and demand the local and the federal governments provide aid in the face of flooding. The floods wiped out 100% of the agroecological production in many agrarian reform communities. 3,500 hectares of rice have already been lost in the municipality of Biamão, Santa Rita, and El Dorado do Sul. 2,700 families have been evacuated from their homes in this area, considered the region with the highest organic rice production in Latin America. The protesters' urgent demands include emergency loans, debt renegotiation, and infrastructure for roads and dams. Venezuela implements the Plan Republica, a national strategy to guarantee the distribution of electoral material, security, and order before the December 3rd referendum voting process. To learn about the progress of the process and other details, let's watch the following report by the correspondent Gladys Quesada.
From Wednesday, November 29th and until December the 4th, Venezuelan authorities enforce Plan República, which translates as Republic Plan, a nationwide strategy that guarantees voting material distribution, safety, and order ahead of every voting process. On this occasion, the plan sets the details for the consultative referendum on the Guayana Esequiba region on December the 3rd.
The men and women of the National Bolivarian Armed Forces are working alongside with the National Electoral Council since days ago, and today, one of the key activities of the National Bolivarian Armed Forces to enhance democracy, as it is the Republic Plan, materializes.
84,000 electoral officers will be at the voting tables. 55,000 operative assistants will provide guidance and the necessary support for all voters who require it. Also, there are over 28,000 voting tables in over 15,000 polling centers all over the country. Over 20,600,000 voters are registered. The electoral authorities and the national institutions highlight the unity of all political and social sectors facing Sunday's referendum.
Esta vez el único programa, la única
This
opción
time, the only program, the only option is to vote 5 times yes for national sovereignty, for our homeland, and the defense of something that always have been, I would say, a culture of our own since we were children and in the schools, the defense of the Esquivo, the defense of our territory, the defense of our sovereignty.
La defensa de nuestra soberanía.
Vamos a elevar nuestra voz de rebeldía contra el robo, la extracción
We are going to raise
ilícita,
our
ilegal
untamable voice
un
against
despropósito que
theft,
está cometiendo
unlawful exploitation,
esa élite
illegal,
política,
the mismanagement
robándole a
that
la
the
República
political
Bolivariana de
elite is
Venezuela y
carrying on by
extrayendo
stealing from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela
petróleo y
and
gas
extracting oil and gas
en
in a
un territorio donde
territory
no ha sido
that has not
delimitado
been defined
de
by the
acuerdo al
instrument that
instrumento
we
que
consider
nosotros
legitimate,
levantamos
the proper one,
como
the Geneva
el
Agreement.
legítimo, como el adecuado, como el pertinente Acuerdo de Ginebra.
The Venezuelan people will go to the polls to ratify a stance and a historical claim on the Guayana Esequiba region on December the 3rd, despite the opposition of the government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the U.S. Gladys Quesada, TeleSUR English, Caracas, Venezuela.
We have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for an English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on the screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final show break, don't go away. Welcome back. On Thursday, the 20th conference of the parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, a key meeting for the future of humanity, opened in Dubai, capital of the United Arab Emirates. Dozens of heads of states and governments will be attending this global meeting on the global warming emergency and other important talks to conduct the first global stock taken after the 2015 Paris Agreement comes into force, from which they will draw a plan of action to drastically reduce emissions and protect lives and livelihoods, are at the starting point for the establishment of the Environmental Loss and Damage Fund. And the UN's COP28 climate conference formally launched a loss and damage fund, launces, by vulnerable nations devastated by natural disasters linked to the global warming. The UAE's COP28 Presidential Sultan Al Jaber told delegates that they have deliberately story, adding that his country will pledge $100 million to the fund. After years of dragging their feet on the issue, wealthy nations backed the fund in a landmark agreement at the COP27 summit in Sharm el-Sheikh last year. Its launch on the first day of COP28 in Dubai followed since negotiation of the mechanism of the fund, which will be housed in the World Bank on an interim basis. COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber, head of the National Oil and Gas Company, said the role of fossil fuels must be included in any agreement at the UN climate talks. Speaking at the opening of the two-week conference in Dubai, Sultan Al Jaber said it was essential that no issue left off the table.
That no issue is left off the table. And yes, as I have been saying, we must look for ways and ensure the inclusion of the role of fossil fuels.
This year is said to be the hottest ever recorded, says Peter Tahalas, chief of the UN's World Meteorological Organization, at the opening of COP28 in Dubai. The UN's WMO warned that 2023 had shattered a whole host of climate records, with extreme weather leaving a trail of devastation and despair.
This year is going to be the warmest year on record. We still have a couple of months of this year left, but we have already achieved 1.4 degrees warming as compared to the pre-industrial times. And we have been breaking records also in various parts of the world, like Europe, Japan, Australia, United States, Caribbean, and South America.
On Thursday, about 90 protesters gathered in support of vegan food policies as attendants arrived for the first day of the COP28 Climate Summit at Expo City in Dubai. The Middle East will host the United Nations Climate Change Conference for the second year in a row over the next week, with countries hoping to agree on a new way to keep the planet from heating up too much by the end of the century. Protesters from around the world, mostly women, stood outside the entrance to the summit's blue zone, waving flags, carrying signs, and chanting in support of mandatory vegan food policies. Activists call on people around the world to stop eating meat as they gathered in Dubai. United Arab Emirates led a protest organizer from Taiwan said they wanted to influence the government to change its focus on food.
And we want to influence government to change their focus on food, because even there's zero emission from fossil fuels, but we have no food. So what is more important? If we have very good nature, high capacity to absorb CO2, even we have high emission from fossil fuel, it will be okay. We don't have much time left to save the world. So we need to have a mandatory policy to change our diet. We are not interested in changing people's diet. But if this action is killing our earth, we have to change it. Otherwise, we are going to have pay the price to lose our future.
On Thursday, the German government's Helsinki climate court case brought by environmental groups, an embarrassing failure that came a day before Chancellor Olaf Scholz was scheduled to attend the COP28 climate summit. Berlin court ordered the government to implement an immediate action program after it failed to meet its own climate targets in the transport and building sectors. The court said the government then adopted a climate action program in October 2023 that did not meet the requirements for immediacy. On November 15, the Constitutional Court ruled that the government acted illegally when it transferred 60 billion euros of induced borrowing capacity from the port aimed at fighting the H1N1 pandemic to the Climate Transformation Fund. The immediate effect of the ruling was to withdraw the 60 billion euro from the Climate Fund.
We are relieved and very much welcome the judgment, because it has made it crystal clear that the German government must honor its climate targets. It cannot postpone this year after year like a New Year's resolution, but must comply with the climate targets in every sector immediately.
We have come to the end of this brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank a Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Ana Rosabal. Thank you for watching.